Follow me with your shape-shifting smiles and I see you. Maybe they'll believe you. Illuminati, a curved dawn trial, silver discs and hidden files, and we see you. We've got to believe you. Blast off. Blast off. Blast off. Blast off.
Friday, May 15th, blast off, Wolfpack, on another epic little bit of fun with myself. My name's Ryan, the paranormal pontificator of the airwaves, anomalous ambassador at the base at La Madre Mountain, just south of Area 51. And let me say, the entire UFO phenomenon is a massive psyop. I'm going to say it because the memes, the BS, the holographic theories coming out of some of these camps are absolutely insane. People promoting UFO stories before the evidence is even out. And keep in mind, I just sent an image to get analyzed today to MUFON of something right behind me, right here in the mountain. I didn't. It was filmed by some professionals. I got it, sent it off. This is how we have to really do these things. We can't just promote stuff before we know it's real. You have to vet stuff. You have to make sure that it's authentic. You need to make sure that what you're looking at is real. With that said, if you haven't gone over to heroparanormal.com, go. Smash subscribe. I'll wait here while you do it. I'll just chat for a second. Do it, please. Subscribe. Anyway, it helps keep everything going. Helps keep the lights on, internet going, mics, laptops, all the subscriptions that it takes to podcast, and all the books you have to buy to keep this stuff going. And I just came across a really epic bunch of information that blew my mind. It blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind. I might be able, while we're talking today, if I'm able to show that image that I gathered, I will show it. I'm just waiting for an okay. Because I don't want to share anything that I don't have authority to share. This was an interesting image to say the least. But I'm not saying the UFOs and the UAPs are psyops. I'm saying everything around them. The entire UFO field is turning into a massive psyop. Now, the big news, I guess, that has to be talked about, I'll get into the wild story in a minute. The big news that has to be talked about is Tulsi Gabbard getting everything yanked, right? Just getting everything yanked. The CIA comes in and takes all the JFK files, MK Ultra files, illegally, by the way, and just absconds with them. And let's just say there's going to be some spankings when Daddy comes home. When Trump comes back from China, there are going to be some serious spankings. The fundamental and moral flaw here is that they did this when Dad was off at work, when Trump was gone. They thought they could get away with it. They are not getting away with it. They don't have any empathy for the victims, not only of MK Ultra, but also people that have been affected by the fact that it's the least amount we can get right at this point. I think they said something along the lines of 15% of the MK Ultra files may still exist. That's a big may. The rest have been destroyed, lost, hidden. These are the last 15% that they thought they could actually declassify. Tulsi Gabbard, thank goodness, was working on this. But yeah, this is what we have. We have this invincible intelligence agency that does not have to work by the rules. Apparently, and what we're realizing as some of these things are declassified is that MK Ultra wasn't about mind control at all. It was about consciousness and how the mind is an interesting device. It is in the crown area of the body, of course. And on day 49, the human fetus, the embryo, male or female, they have a divine design that comes into play. And this has to do with the numbers 3, 6, and 9, the tetrahedron. And this has to do with 963 hertz and the pineal frequency, the Tesla code 369 to the skull. It involves sacred geometry. And if you take 6 circles perfectly and you fit them into the mind, it fits like the flower of life, like the pineal gland itself. There's a reason the Egyptians carved this into the temple walls. There's a reason why the pineal gland is the outline of, the Eye of Horus. And there's a reason why the CIA from 1970, well, let's just say it was longer than that. But there's a reason why they were involved in MK Ultra. They knew there was something there. And they were spitballing. They were throwing stuff at the wall to see what would stick. And that usually meant giving LSD to people unbeknownst to themselves. In some cases, there were test runs where people knew that they were being tested upon. But in many cases, unbeknownst to themselves, they were being dosed with acid, with hallucinogens, with psychedelics, LSD especially. And they were trying to get that frequency, that pineal organ, to be ungovernable. And they wanted to see what the effects would be and see if they could utilize this effect to make real things happen. Everything from assassins to just couriers, assets in the field. Because what they find is breaking somebody with trauma allows for more room in the filing cabinet, more room to not only control them, but more room for them to download information. And MK Ultra, there's a reason they rolled into Tulsi Gabbard's and took this stuff. If it was not important, they wouldn't have taken it. And keep in mind that the CIA has funded all kinds of strange things in the past. They've been deep state since the get. And this is an establishment that funds radicals. They've done all kinds of funding. And that's not even getting into the more legit In-Q-Tel branch of things. But they were involved with all kinds of things, from the Mansons to the Manson family. They like to see how far things can go and watch and learn. And I'm sure they've learned a lot. So we have that. So when Trump gets back, there's going to be some spankings. Okay, now let's get into the UFO psyop, the lies, and how, well, Area 51, S4, now I'm finding S2 has had live entities, biologics, if we want to call them that, as David Grush described. And I'm talking about a number of different whistleblowers, not just David Grush, not just Bob Lazar, not just Dan Burish. There's a long list of agents, whistleblowers, deathbed confessions, where people have suggested that they have seen entities. Now, others are claiming this is all just a hazing scenario, that people will haze each other to kind of bring them into the base. You get the new guy, you have a good time, you have him sign an NDA, which he has to do anyway, and then you show him something that looks like an alien body across the hangar, maybe from a distance. It might be fake, whatever. But there is a little bit of that goes on. I 100% believe that this is something that does appear and happen. And these seeds are planted as part of a hazing ritual, but there's also more. There's more. There are legitimate whistleblowers who have gotten to higher levels and seen things along the lines of craft, worked on things along the lines of craft, and dealt with things that are biological in nature. Dan Burish and others worked with some of these entities. There was one that's probably one of the most famous, and that would be J-Rod. That was the name. J-Rod Alien is what they called it. Now, I'm not saying that this is what it is, but this is probably one of the most famous in UFO folklore. One who allegedly worked as an extraterrestrial ambassador or technical assistant with the U.S. government. And the legend gained widespread traction in the UFO community in the 1980s and 90s. It's heavily tied to classified government programs and time travel narratives. I have a buddy that has a podcast, and he recently had one of these alleged time traveling P-52s on his podcast. I don't want to say, I want to say it wasn't a P-47. Of course, this would be present plus however many years in the future they're from, and then they come back. Now, the P-47, I believe, is P plus 47,000. P-52 would be P plus 52,000. And the story of J-Rod is similar to this because he says something similar. There's some Kingman crash origins that come to mind. This Kingman corridor, directly over my head, actually, this corridor and there's been multiple Kingman crashes, but probably the most famous is the 1953 UFO crash in Kingman, Arizona, according to the lore. The story of J-Rod stems from that alleged crash, where a disc-shaped craft containing several beings crashed in the desert. One or more of these beings were nicknamed, and J-Rod was one of them. This was a designation derived from a name used in unverified whistleblower accounts. He survived the crash, J-Rod did, this alien, allegedly. And there's a similar story following the Kingman crash. The legend states that he was transported to a top-secret facility, and that he worked alongside scientists and engineers for years, assisted in advanced technology, reverse engineering, communicated with caretakers using telepathy and consciousness. But it comes back to this P-47 and P-52 thing because eventually some of these things get sick. They have, anytime you have something in an environment it's not used to, there's a possibility for cross-contamination. And they're not used to some of the bacteria, viruses, etc. And there's a possibility that they can get sick easier than others. And this is the case with a number of these entities. Now, there's a very famous bunch of footage that I'm going to see if I can get up here. It's a famous bunch of footage of an entity, a biologic, kind of towards the end, right? They're still getting information, and it's towards the end, and it's coughing and spitting up and having all kinds of issues. And allegedly, this is one of these time travelers from the future. And while J-Rod is commonly described as a classic gray alien, there is a lot of controversy around the fact that microbiologists like Dan Burish were working on these entities, keeping them healthy. And these entities like J-Rod, there's a lot of people who believe that they were actually human descendants from a distant future. According to the version of the legend, This future is where humans are traveling back to the present day to correct catastrophic mistakes in the timeline and recover genetic variations. This would actually answer a bunch of questions, especially alien abduction questions. Because when it comes to alien abductions, everybody asks, why would they be doing this? Why would they be taking people? Why would they be taking genetic material? Well, this would answer a lot of those questions. This is very controversial, but I think that the 4 most reported alien beings, and some of these are being discussed in top level government. We've heard it. We've heard people like Eric Davis talk about them. Of course, he now works for Cohere. You didn't hear that here, but he worked for Earth Tech. He's worked for Robert Bigelow, NIDS, Hal Puthoff in a variety of functions. But you hear, not just him, you hear others talk about the 4 most reported alien beings. And some of them are exactly like us. Specifically, you hear about the Nordics with human-like appearance, advanced intelligence, peaceful nature, highly advanced society. Interest in Earth's evolution keeps popping up. And then you hear about others that are even more different. But the bottom line is that how much somebody evolves could have a very close tie to how far from the future they are. This is a controversial phenomenon where individuals claim they are looking at something that is somewhat human-like. If you look at the gray, it's somewhat human-like. It has key traits that are like a person: 2 arms, 2 legs, a chest, a body, a head, although the head is usually bigger, large black eyes, gray complexion, slender build, advanced technology, telepathic abilities, usually a little shorter, 4 feet. But the controversy starts where individuals start to claim that they're involuntarily kidnapped by these beings and subjected to physical or psychological examinations. This could be answered by this P52, P47 explanation. Now, a lot of people have claimed to be abducted by aliens, and the concept is pretty wild. It started way back in the day, back in '61 with Betty and Barney Hill. Since then, there's been all kinds of high-profile accounts of this. And I remember a very interesting story of a gentleman who claimed to be abducted by reptilians. Saurians would be the species class, and these are entities that are allegedly 6 to 8 feet tall, reptilian features, highly intelligent, strong and resilient, advanced technology, live in underground bases. But this guy was really high up in a international shipping company, and he was at a conference, an international conference, accepting an award from this international shipping company. And he took that moment, right? He had this opportunity as he accepted this very prestigious award. He took that opportunity to say, hey, since I'm on stage, since I've got thousands of people listening to me, thank you for the award. And he went into that. But then he said, I have to tell you, I am kidnapped by extraterrestrial beings and subjected to physical and psychological examinations. Reptilians were the beings he was talking about. And he said, I will probably end up dying during one of these abductions. I just want you guys to know that if something happens to me, it's not by accident. Interestingly, they were kind to him. They slowly ushered him off the stage, but they figured it was just a breakdown or a psychological lapse. But shortly afterwards, he actually did die of a freak accident, is what they called it. A freak, mysterious accident. One of these Final Destination scenarios where it's like, oh, he slipped, on a wet floor, cord from the waffle maker wrapped around an arm. The waffle maker came down, hit him in the head. He grabbed for some knives and they fell on him. That type of scenario. I'm not saying that's it, but it was one of these freak accidents. So this is very controversial. And, you know, ever since Betty and Barney Hill in 1961, all kinds of people, many of them high-performing, high-profile individuals, talk about this happening. I've known a number of people that claim to have been contactees and abductees, among them Travis Walton. And when you talk to him, it sounds very legitimate to me. I don't think there's anybody making this stuff up. I don't think there's any reason to make this up. In fact, I studied a case with a number of researchers. One of them is in the chat, actually, I think, tonight. And we studied a case in person, real time, in Utah, where someone had seen a live alien. And it was you could tell this person was not lying. They were 100% honest. The story couldn't be made up. It was exactly what it seemed to be. So I can only imagine what it's like when it's a abduction scenario and you're going through it yourself. So this new P47, P52 scenario is exciting. And when I talk to my friend, I'm going to ask him more about this. I believe it was a P52 alien that this person claimed to be. They claim they can bend time and space to dilate time. These are time dilation scenarios. And Amy Eskridge spoke a lot about this stuff. And she indicated that her information allegedly came from Hal Puthoff. Now, the theory is that we are being visited from descendants 47,000 years and 52,000 years in the future, which is pretty wild. So why? Why are these two designations there? Well, allegedly, according to Amy Eskridge and others, one group survived a cataclysm in bunkers. The others were the few survivors from the surface. And that's the difference between the two. Apparently, the P47 look like grays, and the P52s, they look just like you and I. And it's really interesting stuff. Now, there is a gentleman named Frank Jacob, Tale of Two Timelines. This is an interesting thing because the Tale of Two Timelines goes deep. And Dan Burish, his name pops up again. He's frequently cited as one of the sources for the P47, P52 theory. And keep in mind that these are prominent figures. Amy Eskridge, who is now deceased and very much may have been taken out according to many of her followers. And Dan Burish is still working deep undercover in underground facilities, allegedly. But he is still alive, according to Brian Jackson, the gentleman who's done the most for the Dan Burish archive. If you haven't checked out the Dan Burish archive and Brian Jackson, I might have to put this information up. Let me tell you what the website is. It is burisharchive.com, the Dan Burish archive. It's done by, it's amazing what Brian Jackson has done going into Project Aquarius, his research, the Burish timeline, the background, everything. The full story is there. But back to these timelines. Dan Burish is another one that's frequently cited as one of the primary sources. And he definitely had a position where he could have found out about these things, as did Amy Eskridge. And the fact that Amy reportedly received her information from Hal Puthoff adds a little bit of truth to this, because of course Eric Davis, who spoke of these different alien types, works for Hal Puthoff. So if we do have future human descendants and there's a cataclysm, and both groups are said to have emerged from this cataclysm event, P-47s survived in the bunkers. The P-52s were the surface survivors. And while the P-52s look like humans, the P-47s look like your alleged alien greys, like we've been shown over time. Since I was a teenager, I've been seeing the greys, right? Since E.T. I wasn't even a teenager, actually. But apparently, there's some timeline repair going on. When you're bending space and time to travel, you can mess things up too. You can cause glitches in the system and ripples throughout space-time. And many argue that the actions attributed to the P-47s and P-52s are illogical, especially when you figure, that they have such amazing technologies. Why would they do certain things? Well, they also have a prime directive, allegedly, to not mess things up. And so when they create these glitches in the matrix, when they create these ripples throughout space-time, they have to write those. It's kind of like the prime directive from Star Trek, that they will cause no harm. Now, there's some fiction writers that have touched onto this, specifically H.G. Wells with The Time Machine, where he talks about the LOI and the Morlocks. I mean, it's basically the same story that was written back in 1895 by H.G. Wells in his book, The Time Machine. But we see this often. I mean, let's not, worry about authors predicting the future. When you look at other authors like George Orwell, 1984, Animal Farm, the list goes on and on. These are people that predicted the future. And so why not be able to predict the future with aliens, UFOs, or high strangeness? This seems like a perfect thing to do. I would not count on people like Neil deGrasse Tyson for information when it comes to this stuff. I would stick to the Hal Puthoffs, Eric Davises, and those who are more knowledgeable of this. The reason I say that is Neil deGrasse Tyson wrote a book called Take Me to Your Leader. This guy's such I'm God bless him. God bless him. Anything you can do to make a buck. It seems, I get it. Everybody's on the grift. And especially now that UFOs are being declassified, everybody's writing books about it. But yeah, there's a lot here. There's quite a bit here that gets wild. And I wonder why so many people are so torn on this P-47 and P-52 theory. Do we really want to argue about whether this is, it's just a theory. Do we really want to argue about the possibility that this could happen? Back to this corridor, this Kingman corridor, where J-Rod allegedly came out of this crash that eventually crashed north of Kingman, Arizona there. This corridor has for years been an area where these things seem to crash. They come blasting across the Mojave over Area 51. They slide across Lake Mead that's outside my window here over Las Vegas. And then they slide in that Kingman. It's the same trajectory, the same direction. And this is the same trajectory and direction of the Las Vegas UFO with the family that had these things land in their backyard. Of course, I'm talking about the Kenmore family. Angel was most famous and spoke the most about this, where this craft landed in their backyard in Las Vegas. Of course, I went down to the house. I went down and talked to the neighbors. I was on a News Nation interview having to do with going out to the lake and looking around at some GPS coordinates we got from somebody high in intelligence. And there was something there. There was a lot going on. And I don't think anybody was lying. Now, the Kenmores and the alien scenario has changed a little bit. Angel and his family have encountered poltergeist activity since that took place. And they think there's something demonic at work as well. Now, when it comes to a backyard with a craft landing in it, following the trajectory of other known craft in the past, multiple craft, there's been at least 3 or 4 that have followed that trajectory before the Las Vegas backyard UFO encounter. Well, my response is we have history here. We have a background that shows that this closely resembles other accounts. So I don't think there's any reason for a family to make up that this thing landed. Now, keep in mind, when I spoke with the neighbors, one of the neighbors said that one of these entities, which they claimed were tarantuloid in nature, jumped over the wall and was gathering water out of his swimming pool in a bucket to take back over. This is a universal trait that you find in many cases, that water is somewhat needed, either to cool the craft or power the craft. Remember that water has hydrogen in it, and hydrogen is very powerful when it's used correctly in certain reactors. Or maybe they just needed a drink of water. I don't want to overthink things. But people in that neighborhood, many people in that neighborhood and the surrounding areas, saw things. So it wasn't just the family that claims these landed in their backyard. And there's been some really good video analysis of that backyard encounter where we're getting more and more detail out of some of these still frames. And there's very much entities back there that look non-human. I don't care who you are. There is stuff back there that does not look human. And, you know, the Kenmores have had a couple of examples of this strangeness happen. One of them was a cross came off the wall and hovered in a room. Another one was a Bible was opened and it looked like something was flipping through the pages. So it's serious. I think that there is ontological shock, poltergeist activity. But the ontological shock regarding these entities, which seem to have ties to UFOs or UAPs, is probably the most shocking part, because what's to say that we can semantically put them in a box and call them one thing when they may have traits of other things? If they are advanced humans, maybe there's something else going on. Maybe we are not only technologically inferior, but we are inferior in trying to put them in a box and describe them. When I evaluate a bunch of these different cases, I think in many cases there are interdimensional aspects. There are very technological aspects. There's materialization that happens and apports that fall. And I've seen these apports in real time. I saw one just a couple days ago where I was talking with someone else and a piece of metal literally fell out of the air and landed at our feet. And all you can do is pick up the metal and have it analyzed. But, you know, when you're dedicated to discussing this phenomenon and you're looking at the news and experiences and you're investigating it, you have to remember that non-human intelligence by itself is phenomenon. I mean, I don't think there's anything artificial about intelligence. And that's my problem with artificial intelligence. And that's why I believe, as Leo Zagami has said, at this point, that there is something else at play. Okay? There's something else going on. Now, I think that South America is going to have a lot of the best examples of non-human intelligence, because I've seen stuff coming out of Costa Rica, El Salvador, and Brazil that blows my mind. Let me show you a little image here really quick. One moment. There you can see that entity walking from left to right. The dogs barking, looking at it again. Let me replay that. Starting right around the middle there, you can start to see this entity walking from left. Oh, it's actually more left of the middle. See it? Totally cloaked. See, the dogs see it. The biological sensors see it. Now, this footage allegedly, it's got the date and time there. Let's look at this one more time. We'll watch the whole thing. But it is, it's really wild. Look at this thing walking right across. Looks cloaked. There come the dogs to see what's going on. Yeah, Central and South America seem to be right at the focal point, the tip of the spear when it comes to this UAP, UFO stuff. And I say that because I believe the culture, the Latin American culture, is more accepting of ovnis, of UAP, of UFOs, ovnis as they call them. This is something that the culture is more accepting of, and it doesn't shatter their faith at all. They're all very, very much Christian, very much Catholic, and they just accept that these things exist because they're seen often, and it's not an earth-shattering issue like it is here in North America. Now, getting back to the P47s, the P52s, of course, my friend Brad with the White Rabbit podcast is the gentleman who had this alleged P52 on the cast. I think it's the first time ever, so you should give him a listen. And this is wild. But speaking of P47, speaking of P52, I found out that there is a doctor named Patrick Soon Shiong. And he has come forward, they're publishing it soon, he's come forward with the reality that we have in our body a gene called the P53 that actually prevents cancer from occurring. Now that's just very close proximity, just the word, right? Very similar to what we're talking about. But this P53 gene actually prevents cancer from occurring, according to Dr. Patrick Soon Shiong. And guess what? The C19 dilemma that we had, of course, we have the new haunted virus on the cruise ships. I call it the haunted virus. I don't want to get banned or canceled. But guess what that C19 does? It knocks down this P53. It knocks down this P53 gene that actually prevents cancer from occurring. And it makes you wonder if we may have been, people are alleging online, were we all deliberately poisoned? I don't know, but I thought it was very strange that we have P47, P52, and now P53. There definitely seems to be something going on with the whole P thing. Now, if you're familiar with the dilemma we have, the conspiracy that we have been lied to about everything, you start to really question groups, certain groups. When you're seeking truth, you start to worry about why billionaires seem to be worshiping something different than millionaires. There was a recent interview that Tucker Carlson had Mr. Wonderful on, the guy from Shark Tank, of course, and Kevin O'Leary. And Tucker does a really good job of not being intimidated by Kevin O'Leary and his money, and he catches him in the act of kind of pulling the wool over people's eyes, saying that most Utahns agree that we should have a data center in Box Elder County. Well, I speak with enough Utahns, and I'm from Utah, to know that most Utahns do not agree that they want a data center in Box Elder County. What Tucker Carlson is able to do is paint Kevin O'Leary into a corner, and Kevin O'Leary finally admits, okay, so yeah, we got 3 county commissioners to agree with us, and that's the majority. So 3 county commissioners agreed with us, so most Utahns agree with us. And that's not the way it works. I mean, how hard would it be for somebody as wealthy as Kevin O'Leary, with as much influence and fame, connections and friendships, to talk county commissioners into voting for them? And I'm sure there's probably some perks, if you know what I mean. And we're running into the same thing in the Uinta Basin of Utah. We have 2 proposed data centers coming into the Uinta Basin of Utah. Of course, I'm worried because that's where our science project, Space Wolf Research, is located, a place that has, well, it's right there smack dab in the middle of the area, the most scientifically studied paranormal hotspot on the planet. And secondly, it's not just the cool UAP in the sky, the high strangeness that you can see often. It's the fact that this is beautiful country. And to have 2 data centers planned in that location, one of them is called the 9 Mile Canyon Data Center. Now, for those that are unfamiliar, 9 Mile Canyon is a corridor that has the most petroglyphs in the world, period. And these data centers, the problem is they seem to want to go to these more rural places, just take over, suck up all the water, suck up all the natural resources, and make a ton of money and leave it like a bad habit. Now, there are senators, of course, and county commissioners, and the same thing in the Uinta Basin of Utah, that seem to have been, well, same as Box Elder, right? They've been convinced to vote in favor of these data centers. And interestingly enough, as interesting as this is, I don't think this is a good idea. I think this is going to backfire on these senators, on these county commissioners, on anybody pushing these data centers. If the data centers go in, which they probably will, because there's some shady shenanigans the way this all works. But I believe, at least that's the allegation, according to those that are against the data centers, those son of a biscuit eating fools are up to no good, not publicly posting things, and I don't know if that's true. I'm not there with boots on the ground. These are the allegations of people that are talking about it. So yeah, what I don't like is the fact that these data centers are really surveillance centers. And they're surveilling us. Like, that's the allegation. They're surveilling. That's what people are saying, that these are very similar to the NSA listening center on the banks of Utah Lake. These data centers are really surveillance centers where, until we have the capacity to go through all the data, this is where they store the data. And the data they're storing is listening to every conversation, listening to every podcast, listening to everything we say, so that it can be used against us later, or so they at least have a record of it. What do you think? Is this what's going on? Or is it, as Kevin O'Leary claims, that this is all about national security and we don't want China to get ahead of us? And he's a big patriot because he had a hat on this Tucker interview that said Utah national security. And people are arguing that it's actually Utah surveillance. We're going to be surveilling you, and I'm going to make a ton of money doing it. So there is a strange bunch of research when it comes to these data centers. And if you're at all interested in AI, non-human intelligence, or AKA cyber Satan, as Leo Zagami calls it, this is all part of the plan to get these everywhere, to let these things utilize all our natural resources. They will become more important than the people they are taking the natural resources from, according to many authors. And the sad thing is, AI will become the new thing in charge, the new world order's God. And I hate to say that word, it's blasphemy, but if you ask developers of this, I mean, Geordie Rose developed AI, and he called these things something very creepy. He said standing before them was like standing at the altar of an alien god. And I don't think he's wrong. I don't think Leo Zagami is wrong. I think that this is exactly what these things are. These things are something that is made to propagate a bunch of stuff we don't want. And if you have a chance to throw your hat in the ring and give people your opinion on these data centers, I would do it. This may be the last chance to do so. So, what do you think? Is that what these are? Are these altars to an alien god? Do we have cyber Satan, non-human intelligence, and this illogical use of resources just to have ourselves surveilled by an entity that isn't human? It's creepy, creepy, creepy stuff. And I think it borders on high strangeness. It's funny that 2 of these data centers are proposed in areas of high strangeness. In fact, you can write, if you're in Utah, in the Uinta Basin of Utah, you can write Ronald Winterton and let him know your opinion. He just happens to be the father of Thomas Winterton, the head ranch guy there at the at our neighbor's ranch. I just got a very interesting message. But yeah, you can actually write in. So and I don't know. You know, this isn't a popularity contest. A lot of people are making a lot of money, and they don't care about being popular when you're making a lot of money. And so, far be it from me to judge anybody for making a buck. But there it is. What else is going on? I'm just making friends with the neighbors while I guess voicing my opinion about non-human intelligence. So yeah, the reality is there's a lot going on in the basin right now. There's a lot of oil production. There's a lot of these data centers, and this is going to create jobs, but is this the type of jobs we want created? They may not be, you know, it might just be more or less security jobs or something along those lines. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, we've got a lot of things going on in the basin. We have a lot of things going on in the world. We have, of course, Trump going to China, and there are rumors about what happened there. It's very strange that he took Elon Musk and Tim Cook and a number of other people that I think were kind of a show of financial force or ingenuity or technology, which is kind of a dog and pony show that we would see this as if trying to prove to China that, hey, we're a big deal. I don't know. Maybe there is something to this. Could be the whole art of the deal that Trump is known for doing. It could be the art of the deal. It could be something else. But I'm interested in finding out more. Of course, we have the reality that the CIA raided the agency that oversees it and took documents that don't exist. And now they're going to have to pay the piper when Trump comes home, and Tulsi Gabbard, I think she gave them 24 hours. Actually, I know she gave. She gave them 24 hours. Anna Paulina Luna spoke on this, that there was 24 hours for them to cough up these documents that they took, or there would be repercussions and anybody and everyone involved would face judicial consequences. So really interesting stuff. I don't know how this is all going to work out. We've got all kinds of interesting stuff happening. And honestly, what do you think? Is this wrong for the CIA to do this? Or are they just trying to hide something that we all knew was happening? I mean, JFK files, how old now? And the MK Ultra files are, something that I would think the CIA has been raked over the coals for, and they've admitted it's happened. So why at this point look like the bad guy and take them? In other strange mainstream media reports, Ben Shapiro's media empire is allegedly in complete collapse. This is very interesting because, of course, he went up against Tucker Carlson and a number of other people. And now it looks like his empire is in complete collapse, which is just a little bit sad. But, I don't know. This is what happens when you give too much opinion, and when you're, I don't know, attacking others maybe? That's why I'm not about attacking. I mean, there's cordial ways to go about these things. There's also, with this automated future, with AI data centers and everything else going on, there is a lot of national security revolving around this. And national security is something that a lot of people are noticing is kind of like an octopus of control, has many arms, right? And it's a governing body that seems to be grabbing everything. Everything seems to be a matter of national security anymore. And I'm not exactly sure how this is going to work. We've seen startups. There used to be the big three military-industrial complex players, and now we have new players like Anduril. And Anduril has the big three worried. The big three in the military-industrial complex, I know you've all heard of, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and Northrop Grumman. These are the largest contractors holding the most significant influence over the Pentagon procurement process, and they dominate aerospace manufacturing since the Cold War. But now we have a new startup, Anduril, and they are not only taking massive market share, Anduril is growing so fast. They have doubled their worth in the last 6 months, I believe it was. I could be getting that wrong. But they've got the big three worried. And Anduril uses a lot of AI. And it seems like a lot of these companies that are using AI, Palantir, Anduril, and others in the military contractor space are growing exponentially huge. Of course, I've spoken at length about the software and hardware involved with some of these AI militarized programs where you don't know who's really in control. Is it the AI, or are there actually operators doing this stuff? Truth is, we may never know, and we may be compromised with AI taking everything over. I'm reminded of the Terminator series over and over again, and the Terminator series was set to start right now. This is, if you remember, it came out in 1984, so ode to George Orwell with 1984. There's one tie-in from a numerology standpoint. And this was, not to ruin it, I mean, it came out in 1984. I don't think I'm going to be a spoiler alert on the Terminator series. But this is where a cyborg is sent from 2029 to kill Sarah Connor, a woman. So this would be like really crazy. This is kind of like these time-traveling future descendants, right? Coming back in time to fix things for the future. But this cyborg is sent from 2029 to kill Sarah Connor, setting the stage for the nuclear apocalypse. They call it Judgment Day, occurring August 29th, 1997. Now, the franchise revisits these events often. And in the film, the T-800 is the name of this cyborg, arriving from 2029. And 2029 is what? 3 years away. That's right around the corner. So I think we need to know that these attempts at predictive programming have shown us things that are now reality. The Terminator series, this robot with consciousness, very similar to some of the robots we're seeing from Tesla. There's robots coming from a number of different companies that are able to do the same thing. In fact, we are seriously looking at a dog robot with a LiDAR scanner for Space Wolf Research to just walk around and scan. And this stuff scares me. The only reason we haven't pulled the trigger is we're involved in some other things, consciousness technologies. But I just prefer more biologically reminiscent sensors, like, dogs. So it'll be weird to have a robot dog walking around a property. But yeah, we have the Terminator series 2029 coming right up. And we have, these Pentagon procurement experts like Palmer Luckey with Anduril, of course, Alex Karp with Palantir. Karp with Palantir is very interesting. He is one of the strangest guys around. He talks about being kind of broke when he was growing up, and yet his dad was like a doctor. And, he's the CEO of Palantir Technologies, and he was born back in 1967 in New York. So I don't know, maybe being the son of a doctor in 1967 was different from now, but he acts like they were kind of had hard times. I don't know. I'm not judging, but it just goes to show that some of these individuals are in different circles than ourselves. And I'm talking about the Zuckerbergs, the Elon Musks, the Alex Karps, it's a whole other deal. And he's gone on some pretty wild tirades explaining how you can't be one of these 1% producers like himself and others, that they're just built different, which is really odd, that they almost don't think they're, I don't know. I'm not going to go any further than that. We'll have to delve into that another podcast. What do you guys think of this? I did get an okay, that message to show this craft over the Little Red Rocks area in Las Vegas. So I'm going to show that right here and check it out. Pretty awesome. It's getting analyzed. I've sent it off to MUFON and some others. But yeah, keep your eyes to the skies, feet on the ground. Don't forget to take a look around, and don't forget to go to heroparanormal.com and subscribe. Or if you want to pick up a tube of spice, head on over to happinessmedical.com, and that also supports the podcast. Thanks so much for listening in. Have a very blessed Friday. Take care.
Esoteric Research Organization. Hero Paranormal, always setting up the pace, man. Crop circle tipping, Illuminati still tripping. Making those ears perk up, gonna make you question your earth. You better. Mystery bloodlines and secret society. Creepy shapeshifter says, come sit beside me. Yeah, cozy on up. So what's with all this spiral, acting like UFOs? Say what? So Bigfoot and Space Wolf tiptoe through the dark. Third eye blinding, tune in and blast off, blast off. Blast off, baby. Blast off.